welcome to our video tutorial for this Holly cat collar. So I hope you enjoy it. Please like, share and subscribe, and we hope to see you soon. Thanks, bye. So to make this Holly cat collar, you'll need some yarn, most likely in green and red. I'm going to use these two today. Both are a cotton acrylic blend. One would be about a 2 weight, this one here, and this one's about a 1 weight. But they're both pretty fine weight yarns. You can use chunkier weight. I've also made this in a chunkier weight yarn, and it turns out, really nicely. It just depends on the look that you're going for. Obviously, these are going to give a more delicate look than a chunkier weight. You'll need a crochet hook or hooks that correspond to your yarn, and I'm going to use a 2.5mm for my green for the leaves, and I'm going to use a 2mm for the berries, the red. So you can just use one hook size, that's also fine. You'll need a darning needle to weave in your ends and also do a little bit of sewing. You'll need some scissors to snip your ends, a tape measure to have a general idea of your cat's neck circumference. This collar is really easy to fit, so you don't need an exact measurement. You just need a kind of a general idea of where your cat sits in standard cat sizes, and I'll include a guide to standard cat sizes in the description box below. Now, with regards to the berries, I'm going to offer you 2 ways to make the berries. One way includes using pom-poms, and if you've got a pom-pom maker, a small pom-pom maker, that would be ideal, or any other way to make a pom-pom. And the way I'm going to make them today is making little amigurumi balls, and if you're doing the way I'm doing today, you'll just need a little bit of stuffing or yarn scrap. This is just a little bit of cotton wool that I can stuff my berries with. So I'm going to make the amigurumi style berries today. And I'm not going to go through the pom-pom in any great detail. So if you want to make pom-poms, then that's absolutely fine. I'm not going to talk too much more about that today. Okay, so here's one collar that I've made previously, and you can see that's in a much chunkier yarn. This is the more chunky effect that you get from this, this sort of yarn. This would be about a 5 weight yarn. It's an acrylic wool blend, and I think I used a 4mm crochet hook for this. So I still use quite a, not a super large hook. So this one also you'll notice that I've made with pom-poms. Okay, so you can make the berries with pom-poms if you want to, like this one. Now, the stitches and techniques are definitely beginner friendly. You'll need to know how to slip knot onto your hook, how to create a chain, how to slip stitch, how to single crochet, how to half double crochet. Half double crochet is used in the main part of the leaves and the collar. You'll need to know how to double crochet. You'll need from there to know how to weave in your ends, how to make pom-poms if you're using pom-poms, and otherwise if you're using the amigurumi ball method that I'm going to use today, you'll need to know how to make a magic ring, how to single crochet decrease in the amigurumi method, and from there just sewing whatever you've chosen the berries to the tie. So definitely beginner friendly, but just a reminder that I don't run through these basic stitches in any great detail in my tutorials, but there's heaps of tutorials on YouTube about basic crochet stitches. So please check out one of those before you start if you're not sure about any of those techniques. I use US terminology. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so just before we get started on the crochet, I always feel like it's useful to have a perspective of how we're going to construct the garment. So what we're going to do is make the leaves first, and we're going to make 2 of the leaves. Okay, this part here. Then we're going to join the leaves with the collar portion, and then we're going to make the tie, and I'll just show you how this, so this just ties the 2 leaves together. Okay, so that's how we're going to construct this. So we'll start with the leaves. So take your green and make a slip knot onto your hook. However you do that. There's lots of different ways to slip knot, so however you do that is fine. And then we're going to chain 4. 2, 3 and 4. Now we're going to place 4 half double crochets into that first chain, or the furthest chain from the hook. So yarning over, insert into that chain, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through all 3. So that's 1 half double crochet. Then we're going to do 3 more in that same space. That's 2, that's 3 and 4. Okay, now we're going to chain 2 and turn, and then in each stitch here we're going to place 2 half double crochets. So yarning over, 2 half double crochets in each stitch. So go back into that same stitch and place your second half double crochet, and then in each stitch along place 2 half double crochets. So I'm going to finish that off camera and I'll meet you in a moment. Okay, so moving on to row 3. So you've placed in row 2 2 half double crochets in each stitch, chaining 2 and turn, and in this row 3 we're just going to place 1 half double crochet in each stitch. So that's 1. So we've got 8 stitches here. We're just going to place 1 in each stitch. So I'll meet you at the end of row 3. Okay, so this is what we've got so far, kind of like a little fan shape. And just to put this in the context, so this is this part here. Okay, right in the corner here. Okay, so moving on. Now, if you're familiar with increasing in the round, this is going to make more sense, but if you're not, it doesn't matter, that's fine, just come with me. So you're going to chain 2 and turn. In that first stitch you'll place 2 half double crochets. In the next stitch 1 double crochet, half double crochet. In the next 2, so 2 half double crochets in that third stitch, and then in the next stitch 1. So you can see this pattern, it's 2 and 1, 2 and then 1. So I'm going to finish off this row, so alternate 2 half double crochets in one stitch, 1 half double crochet in the next stitch, and I'll meet you at the end of row 4. Okay, so that's the end of row 4. Now we're chaining 2 and turn. In this next row, it's back to just 1 half double crochet in each stitch. So place 1 half double crochet in each stitch and I'll meet you at the end of this row. Okay, so that's the end of row 5. Now you get to decide here, now this will depend on the size of the yarn that you're using, but when I use this larger yarn, my next row is actually going to be this row of points here, which are the holly leaf points. Because I'm using this much finer yarn, I'm actually going to go for another increase and then another row of 1 half double crochet in each stitch, and then I may even go a little bit further, I'll see, but then I'll start this row here. Now, if you want to stop with the size of the leaf that you've got already and you want to skip forward to this row, I'll put the timestamp on the video so you can skip forward. So you get to decide how big you want to make these leaves, and that will depend on the look you're going for, probably the size of your cat. It'll depend on the yarn and the hook size that you're using. I'm going to continue on and do another row, at least one more row of increases, so chaining 2 and turning. Now, if you're familiar with that standard increase in the round, you'll probably know what's next. So in this first stitch, we're going to place 2 half double crochets, and then in the next 2 stitches, just 1 half double crochet. And then in the next 2 half double crochets, and then in the next 2 just 1 half double crochet. So I'm going to finish off this row and I'll meet you at the end. Okay, so you can probably see that we're alternating increase rows and non-increase rows. So I'm going to do another row of 1 half double crochet in each stitch. So you go ahead and do the same if you're following me this far. Go ahead and place 1 half double crochet in each stitch, and I'll meet you at the end of this row. Okay, so I think I've got my leaf, the main part of my leaf, as big as I want it to be for this version. Now, if you wanted to continue, you can go another row of increases. So if you're following that standard increase pattern, your first stitch would be 2 half double crochets. The next 3 stitches, 1 half double crochet. And then you would repeat that pattern to the end of the row. So you can increase this as big as you like. And then just in between each increase row, you have a row of 1 half double crochet in each stitch. But if you want to stop here and just create this border now, then this is how we're going to do it. And it will depend a little bit on where you've stopped your increases, because we're kind of continuing it as a bit of an increase row. Well, it is an increase row, okay, along here. So you want this to fall on an increase row, okay? So you always want the row of 1 half double crochets just before it, and then your increase row will be replaced by this edge row, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so we're going to chain 2, and in this first stitch we're going to place a half double crochet. So you'll remember, if we were increasing normally, we would place 2 half double crochets in this first stitch, but we're going to place 1 half double crochet and then a double crochet. So back in the same stitch, a double crochet, and then we're going to chain 4, 2, 3 and 4, and then we're going to slip stitch into that first chain. So just slip stitch into that first chain, and then in the next stitch we're going to double crochet, and then back in the same stitch a half double crochet. Okay, so just to pause here, because where I'm up to with my increase rows, I've increased in this stitch and I've also increased in this stitch. But if I was increasing without doing this border, what I would be doing in this row is 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you need to have that pattern in mind. So because I know I've got if I was increasing as normal, I would have 1, 2, 3 stitches in between my increases. Then I know that I've got 2 single crochets to go, okay, to complete that pattern. So just to recap, so if I was increasing just normally, it would be 2, 1, 2, 3. So I want to follow the same pattern, but I also want to add these little peaks on that are the holly peaks. So what I've done is 1 half double crochet, 1 double crochet back in my same increase stitch, chain 4, slip stitch, double crochet in the next stitch, half double crochet in the same stitch, and then because my increasing pattern is I need 2 more stitches to be filled, I've got single crochet in there. Okay, so for an example, let me just go back to my one I made previously. Because I started this edge on the previous increase, so I've only got if I was increasing normally on this row, but because this yarn is much chunkier, I'm increasing one increase previously than what I was doing here. So I've got half double crochet, chain 4, slip stitch, double crochet, half double crochet, 1 single crochet, because I needed just 2 stitches to be filled in between each increase, or in between each increase. Okay, so that will entirely depend on where you're at with your increase rows. Now, once again, I hope that's making sense. Yeah, hopefully I've explained that well enough. But now, because I've finished that little section, I'm going to move on to another section. So just as if I was increasing normally, So I'm going to place my half double crochet, back in the same stitch, a double crochet, chaining 4, and then slip stitch in that first chain, and then in the next stitch double crochet, in the same stitch half double crochet, and then because of where I'm at, I've got 2 single crochets in the next, or one in each of the next 2 stitches. So I've got 2 more times to repeat that same pattern. So you go ahead and do that, and I'll do the same, and I'll meet you at the end of this row. Okay, so I'm just at my last sequence here, and just to run through it one more time with you, half double crochet, same stitch, double crochet, chaining 4, slip stitch into that very first chain, next stitch, double crochet, same stitch, half double crochet, and then if you've done this correctly, you'll have the same number of single crochets left to do as you had here. Okay, so that's worked out perfectly. Now what can sometimes happen is after this, after you've done this little cluster here, or this little, these 2 stitches here, you can sometimes miss the next stitch, so just be careful that you're working into every stitch. Okay, so that's most of the first leaf done. Now what we're just going to do from here is we're going to add a single crochet border. Okay, so chain 1, and then we're just going to place evenly spaced single crochets down the edge of the leaf. So try not to make too big holes on the side here. If you can get your hook into the center of stitches or chains rather than stitches and or chains, rather than into the holes, it'll just turn out a little bit neater. So there's no stitches obviously to put your hook into, so you're just going to have to place evenly spaced single crochets down the edge here. And then once you get to this hole here in the beginning is actually quite important, because that's where we're going to put our ties through. So let me just work my way down there. I've just got one more single crochet, and then into the hole where you started, place 3 single crochets at least. Okay, 1, 2 and 3. So you really want to open up that hole, because that hole there is where we're going to, so just to show you on this one, so that's where we feed the ties through. Okay, so that's our hole where the ties go through, so you want that to be nice and open. And then you can work in your tail or just weave it in later, and you're just going to do the same along this edge, single crochets along this edge, just evenly spaced, and I'll meet you once we get back here. And once you get to the edge here, you're just going to slip stitch to join to that very first half double crochet there, and then just yarn over, pull through, and leave a tail. Now I'll just snip off that end. That's my tail end that I worked in, so that can snip off. So you're just going to repeat that same process to make your second leaf. So I'll meet you once I've made mine. Okay, so I've got my 2 leaves there. Now you'll want to turn one upside down, because you want them to be the same, like sort of mirror images of each other. Okay, so that's my one that's kind of the right way in, and that's the one that's kind of upside down. Okay, so now we're going to add this border part here. Okay, so we're going to start with, we're going to work basically, well actually let's start over this side. So we're going to work around and then come back to here. Okay, so tie on to this corner here, and actually I'm going to tie on right right down there. So how I tie on, there's lots of ways, but how I tie on is just pull up a loop and then I chain one, pull, oops, and that one, pull nice and tight. Now I'm going to chain two here just for some height, and then I'm going to work my half double crochet back into that same tie on point. Okay, so this is half double crochets, but we're going to use all the way around. So in each of those single crochets that you placed along the border of your leaf, you're going to place a half double crochet. Oops, yarning over first. Place a half double crochet. Now I'm going to finish doing that off camera, just to the end here, and then we're going to basically make a chain that will accommodate your cat's neck circumference, and then we're going to join back on over here. So I'll meet you shortly once I've got to the end here. Okay, so I'm just placing my last half double crochet in that very last stitch, and now we're going to, like I said, make the chain that will go around your cat's neck. So you'll need to just measure how wide each leaf is. So basically the leaves are going to sit like this. Okay, so this will be part of the neck circumference. So on each of those for me I've got 5 centimeters, so I've got a total of 10 centimeters there. And Melba's neck circumference is about 24 centimeters. So I need to add at least another 14 centimeters and just a little bit extra. So I'll probably add another 15 centimeters. So I'm just going to start to chain here to that length. So I'll need about a 15 to 16 centimeter chain. So that also depends how loosely you want it to fit. So just keep chaining until you've reached that length. So I'm going to finish off my chain off camera. So I'll see you in a moment. Okay, so I've got my chain there and it's about 15 centimeters. So yours will be different to mine depending on your cat's neck circumference and how much length you've already got on your leaves. Now, just make sure that your chain isn't twisted. And mine is kind of twisted, so let me just unravel like that. And then, one more time. And then you're going to attach onto this edge here. Okay, so what I do is I just slip stitch into that very first stitch on the edge there. Let's just tighten up those ends, then chain 2 and work back into that same space, okay, where you slip stitched. And just make sure you're pulling tight on all your ends. And then along the top of this leaf, you'll place your half double crochets that are starting to make your collar. Now, actually, I could have worked in that tail, but it doesn't matter. I'll just weave it in. I'll weave it in at the end. So I tend to weave all my tails in at the end, but you can do it at any point during the process. So 1 half double crochet in each of the stitches along this top of this second leaf, so you're working towards the center of the leaf. So this is what we've got here. Okay, let's just get those tails out of the way. So there's the neck circumference, and this is the part that's going to be joined by the berry ties. So now it's up to you how many rows you want to go for. So you're just going to chain 2 and turn. So you can make your collar area as thick or as thin as you want. I'm probably going to go for at least another row, probably 2. So you're just going to place half double crochets, 1 in each stitch along the leaf, and then 1 half double crochet in each chain along the chain, and then finally 1 half double crochet to the end. Now you can repeat that another you know, however many times you want to. It's, you know, it's entirely up to you how thick you make this area. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to, I need to go back. I'm sorry about this. I need to go back because I've forgotten to tell you to make a decrease at the beginning here. My apologies. So sorry, we're back at the beginning of this row. So I've changed my 2. And in these first 2 stitches, we're actually going to make a half double crochet decrease. So make a half double crochet decrease in those first 2 stitches. Okay. And then your half double crochet in each stitch, because we just want that to kind of start to angle up a little bit. Okay, you'll just, let me show you on this one. See how I've just angled that one slightly, and it just makes it sort of a little bit neater. I mean, you know, you don't have to do that actually. You could just make that more squared edge, but I like it to be just a little bit rounded. So continue on, like I said, with your half double crochets all the way along the chain, and then along the edge of the other leaf here, and you'll make in this, if you're doing the decreases, you'll make a half double crochet decrease in these 2 over this side here. Okay, so I'm going to go along. I'll work that off camera, and once again my apologies for making you go back there. You know, that sometimes happens with crochet. It's better to go back and get it how you want it than look at it later and go, I should have gone back. So, you know, that sometimes happens. So we're going to keep moving along. I'm going to keep going. Let's just do a couple of these chains together. So, you know, you'll just work into the chain as you normally would. Just into one loop of the chain. You could work into the 3rd back loop if you wanted to. Oops, this yarn's splitting a little bit. So I'm just working into my chain there. And then I'm going to just work one into each of my chains all the way along. So you go ahead, you do the same, and I'll meet you at this other side here. Okay, so I'm at my last 2 stitches here, so I'm just going to do my half double crochet decrease in these last 2, and then I'm going to go for another row. You can stop here if you want to, but I'm going to chain 2 and do a half double crochet decrease in these first 2 stitches. Oops, oh, that's I'm starting a single crochet decrease. Okay, half double crochet decrease, and then I'm going to do another row of these half double crochets around the collar. Now I think I'll probably stop after that one. I think that will be enough for me. I'm going to do one more row, and then I'll stop. You can continue on to make a thicker collar if you want. So what the collar kind of does as it sits on your cat is it kind of does this little sort of like just sits like that, and then you tie here. So you can make that as wide as you want to. Okay. So I'll finish off this 3rd row, and I'll see you after that. Okay, so there's our leaves done, and now you're going to take your red, and we're going to make the berries that will attach to the ties. So make a magic ring. Okay. So if you, again, reminder, if you need to brush up on that technique, then check out a YouTube video. And then into that magic ring, we're going to place 6, oops, split a yarn, 6 single crochets. So don't chain, you don't need to chain, just place 6 single crochets into your magic ring. Now, I should have mentioned at the beginning that a stitch marker might be useful here. You can use a stitch marker because we're just working into it in a spiral. Okay, but you can, because it's so small, you can usually just count. Now, I think that's 6. Let's Let's just make sure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah. And then just pull your tail end to close your ring. So just give that a gentle but, you know, quite good tug to close your ring. Now this is where you can use your stitch marker if you want to. You can mark that last stitch, but you've just got to count 2 single crochets in the next 6 stitches. So you're going to count 12 stitches. Okay, so into that first stitch, place 2 single crochets, 1 and 2. So that's 2, 3 and 4. That's 2 single crochets in the next stitch. And then you're going to keep working around 2 single crochets in each stitch until you get 12 stitches. So I'll meet you once I've done that. Okay, so I'm just placing my 11th and 12th stitch into that last stitch in the round. 1, it's 11 and 2 makes 12. Okay. Now we're going to place 1 single crochet in each stitch, so count 12 stitches. That's 1, 2. So go ahead, just place 1 single crochet in each of those 12 stitches. That's 3, and I'm going to do the same, and I'll meet you once I've finished that. Okay, so you can see you're getting that little round shape. So now we're going to decrease in the amigurumi fashion. So how that is that you'll take the front loop of the first stitch, and then it can be a little bit tricky, but then the front loop of the second stitch, so just the front loop of both of those stitches, and then you'll make a single crochet through both of those stitches. So you're going to do that 6 times. So that's once and twice. So I'm going to do that 6 times. So I've done it 2 times now, and I'm going to do 4 more. So I'll meet you once I'm around. Okay, so you've got your little berry, and you should have 6 stitches. Now just make sure you pull that top closed. Now just pull out your hook, so just pull out a bit of a loop there, and you're going to take your stuffing, and so you'll stuff your tail end into your berry. Now you can use the end of your scissors, or you can use the end of your crochet hook. You'll just stuff your tail end in there. So that's the tail end from the beginning. And then take your stuffing, and my berries are tiny, so I'm not going to need much stuffing at all. Actually, that's way too much. Let's just get a tiny bit here. Stuff that in. Still too much, I think. Let's just take a little bit off. So you'll stuff your berry to your liking. I kind of like mine quite well stuffed, but you know, you also don't want to overstuff it so the stuffing's showing through the stitches. So there we go. Now leave a long tail. So just what you're going to do, yeah, just keep pulling. So you've pulled out your hook, you're just going to keep pulling out a length of tail. So keep nice long tail, because you're going to need a bit for this next bit just to close up the ring here, and you're also going to need some to sew your berries onto your tie. So leave a good amount. I always leave way more than I need, but it's better than the opposite. So take your needle, and I've got myself a thinner needle here. And you're just going to close up your berry so take the front loops of each of the 6 stitches and just work your way around them. So I'm just putting my hook into each of the front loops of those 6 stitches that remain. 1, 2, 3, and just sewing closed the whole of my berry. Let's just do one more. So there's my berry. So just keep your tail end on there. Now you can just, if you want to finish this off with a little knot, you can. Actually, let's go under here. But you're going to sew it onto your tie anyway, but you can just finish that with a little knot. Okay, so there's one. You're going to repeat that process and make your second berry, and I'll meet you once I've done mine. Okay, so we've got our 2 leaves, our 2 berries, and now we're just going to create a chain that will join our berries and make our little tie. So you can make this as long or as short as you want, but you'll just slip knot onto your hook, and then you'll chain to the length that you want for your ties. So that's completely up to you. If you want longer ties or shorter ties, if you want to tie a bow with them, if you want to just be able to tie a little single knot with them, it's entirely up to you. I'm going to chain. So, I mean, this one was much bigger, and it's got a much different style to this one I'm making today. But I made these ties quite long, so I could make this kind of, nice big bow. But for this one, I think because I'm going a bit more delicate, I don't think I'm going to do quite as long. So you go ahead and make the chain that you want, and I'll do the same, and I'll meet you once we've done that. Okay, so I've got my chain as long as I want there. So I'm just going to pull through, yarn over, pull through, just leave a little tail that I can just secure the bottom of my chain with. Okay, so take your needle, and you'll just work your tail ends up into the chain a little bit. So I just tend to work into the back of the chain, but you just want to work it just up into the chain. So I don't tend to work too far up because it thickens the chain, and I don't want that to be super obvious moving up the tie. But I'm just, sorry, I think I'm working off camera there. I'm just going to work that tail end up a little bit and then back down a little bit. So it does, as you see, it thickens up that end. So just try not to misshape too much. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side, and then we'll come back and we'll sew the berries onto our chain. Okay, so we've got our tie there. Now take your first berry, and we're just going to thread our needle with the tail that we left on the berry. And then we're going to sew that onto the base here. Okay, so you would do a similar thing. If you're using pom-poms, you would do a similar thing. And I've got plenty of tail here. So what I do is I go through and then I go back through at the base of my chain. So I've come through to attach the berry, and then I'm going to go, obviously don't go back through the same place where you just went through, otherwise it will negate the stitch, but I'm just going to go back through, and that just helps to keep the berry sort of centered. So I'll get that through. Come on through. Go. And then, so again, I would do the very same thing if I was doing a pom-pom. I would sew it, and I did for the other one. I would sew it just the same way. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up through the bottom of the berry and up into the top. Let's find a way through that stuffing. Okay, there we go. So come out the top, and that just makes it a little bit more secure there. Now you can go up and back a couple of times. So you come back down, obviously just not where you have just come in. Okay, I'm just going to get that through off camera, so one moment. And I'm through, and then I'm going to go back just one more time, just to make that sure that's nice and secure. And then I'm going to snip off my end, so I'm going to go back up through the center of my berry. And I'll just work that through once again with my, it's a bit hard to work this on camera, so I'm just going to pull my needle through off camera. Okay, so once again I'm through, and then I'm just going to snip off that end, and then I'm just going to use the end of my needle, and anything that's left out with the tail, I'm just going to poke that into the center of the berry. So I've got one berry sewn in there. And what does tend to happen is those ends come out a little bit of the chain, which you might just have to tidy up. Okay, so now make sure now you thread your tie through, and then you're just going to sew on your other berry in the same way. So I'm going to go and do that off camera, and I'll meet you once I've sewn on my second berry. I don't know why, but it's always easier to sew these things when I'm off camera. I don't know whether it's the angle, or I don't know, maybe it's performance anxiety or something. I don't know, but it always seems so much easier when I'm off camera. And so I've sewn on that second berry, just poke that tail in, and there you have it, your little holly collar. So look how cute that is. It's gorgeous. So I'd love to see photos of how yours turned out. So please send those along to catventurous.community@gmail.com, or you can tag us on social media at catventurous.crochet. So wishing you all a Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, however you celebrate this time of the year. So yeah, hope to see you soon. Thanks very much. Bye. You want a treat? You want a treat? You did good. Yeah. Okay, ready. Okay, let's do a treat.